system. So first, about the problems. Really, it's all around the problems with machine learning and today's mining community. When you look at the three pieces, customers, miners, and cloud providers. So customers today in construction or farming that want to leverage machine learning to do anything. Maybe it's detect illnesses in crops or inspect the progress of their construction sites. They just can't do it. They need data scientists on board. They need this whole infrastructure to do it. And you might be thinking, well, maybe they can use the cloud providers. They can. But the cloud providers, it's very costly, and they're actually lagging behind in technology that we need to do proper machine learning. Now, most importantly is the mining community. So the miners today, they're processing crypto, transactions. They're creating their, doing the hash codes, trying to race to validate a transaction. It's all very useful work, right? But it's actually an excessive use of work. You're using these expensive machines just to create cryptographic hashes, and they really could be doing something much more beneficial than just, oh, let me generate a hash, like doing machine learning. The solution is a decentralized machine learning infrastructure powered by miners with a simple API for the customers to use and access the system. Now, just to get a little bit into the market and the space and what we're looking at, we're focusing on the construction space and the ag space primarily. When you think about construction, you might be thinking, well, how does machine learning apply to this? Well, one of the biggest problems in construction is something called rework. That means that when they're actually doing a job, they have to, they'll make mistakes, and they have to tear it down and rework that. It might cost them 2 or 3 times more just to do that. That accounts for 5% of the total project's cost. That's $50 billion, right, for a $10 trillion industry. Now, the way you can abate that is by taking daily progress photos, right? And you capture imagery, laser scans. The problem is you need someone to look through it. That's where machine learning comes in. Machine learning analyzes it for them and lets them see it and do it faster. Now with agriculture, it's a very similar thing. Illnesses affect these crops worldwide and chop their production by 40% or more. Now, you think that's very inefficient. Using drones or anything aerially, capturing imagery, being able to design and detect those illnesses from the air, this type of platform can take care of that. Now, I'm sure you guys know about AI. You're familiar with it. It's growing, 36% CAGR, very basic stuff. One thing I really like to talk about, though, is once we get this platform up off the ground, a decentralized infrastructure, it would be larger than an AWS with just 1 or 2 mining pool partnerships. If you look at AWS, they have 2 million servers worldwide. And that is not just for machine learning, that is just for everything. Now,
how many machines are a mining pool?
I'm sorry?
How many machines are a mining pool?
It varies. So I believe NiceHash has about 2 million. And you'll see Antpool have something similar, a little bit more. Genesis will be a little bit less. But the recent reports show about 500 million miners worldwide, which is, okay, is that really or not? But that's what they're showing right now. Now, when it comes to our product, there's 3 pieces to it. Number 1 is our own blockchain. Now, this blockchain is different. It's not for currency transactions. It's a decentralized database for all the learning of the AI. So everything gets stored there. It's decentralized, but it's also private and secure. So if we're learning what pictures of bad apples look like, we do learn that, and we store that on the chain, but not the picture. We do something different. It also works side by side to any blockchain. We've built it around Ethereum instead of going to anybody else. The second piece to that is our mining software. We call it the learner. This is what the miners would download. They download it, install it on the rigs, and let it do its stuff. It's a pluggable architecture, cross-platform, and it supports all the basic computer vision, machine learning algorithms that are needed to be able to support doing the processing. The third piece is a RESTful JSON API for the customers to leverage and use the system. They don't need data scientists or anything on board. They just send their data, here are my tokens, use the API, get the result. Now, when it comes to our model, we did everything around tokens. We wanted everybody to pay with tokens. When we took it out and we started talking to some people, we realized a lot of organizations weren't familiar with that yet. So it basically starts at tokens, and we have a SaaS model, which is a 3-tier plan based off data usage, which basically abstracts the use of the token, but the token is still underlying inside of the actual SaaS plan itself. Now, when it comes to our strategy, there's 4 pieces that are the biggest pieces to us. Mining. So we're already talking to the largest mining pools on the planet and many other miners out there. We're planning to work with them closely and make them our infrastructure. The goal here, I mean, they are going to be making a lot more by doing machine learning than just doing Ethereum or something else. They see the advantage to that. Without them, we have no infrastructure. 2 is customers with our partners. So I've already mentioned to you that we're doing work with construction and agriculture. Our partners are also working in those spaces. Now we're focusing on getting them signed up as beta customers now, and when we launch the platform in 2019, they'll become live customers. The last piece are the cloud providers. So when you think about this angle, it's really important. So cloud providers like Amazon, why would they want to work with a guy like me, right? Well, remember, cloud providers are carrying a big infrastructure, a huge inertia, a huge cost. Every 3 years, they need to recycle their hardware. Well, why do they have to keep doing that? You know, Facebook just built out, 7 data centers? That's $14 billion. And they got to keep doing that every few years, or every 5 or 6 years, recycle hardware. With this, we've incentivized the miners to keep redoing their hardware because they want to keep making more money. We incentivize that. So it's automatically uploaded, automatically upgraded, everything. With the cloud providers, the goal there is to get them to use our platform for machine learning. Okay, so with the competitors, I tried to sum it up and make it as easy as possible. We looked at every competitor in the space doing AI. We said, okay, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? How do they compete? Do they compete? What we saw is a trend that everyone is doing a marketplace. We're not. We're giving an end-to-end solution. That was really the biggest differentiator that we saw between us and everybody else. The other differentiator that we did see, I know that some of them have changed in recent months, was that there was lack of partnerships, lack of customers, and those are things that we're bringing to the table. And here's where we get to how we're bringing that, right? So instead of listing the top, I'm going to list the bottom. This is one of our strongest strengths aside from our technology, which is our existing relationships. So we've worked heavily in the construction, in the agriculture space. We have all these connections plus a whole lot more. We're already in conversations with them. They love this. They want to use it. Aside from that, it's what our platform offers. Number 1, it's a simple solution for these customers. 2, decentralized infrastructure. It's fast, always upgraded. It's great. 3, I talked to you earlier about Pathway. Pathway being this decentralized database of AI learning, right? So we've learned what apples look like and what web behaviors look like, or whatever it is you put on there. Well, that is shared for everybody. And the people that provide the data to that can actually monetize it. So we actually get a network effect as well. The more people use it, the better it becomes. So if you think about things like Facebook, they don't share their database. They don't share that information. Here, we can. Now, when it comes to our team, we're pretty much well-rounded. So we have guys that are heavy in the crypto space. We have guys that have been heavy in making companies in VC space. Myself, my co-founders, we've worked on several ventures together. We've known each other for 15 years or so. Some of our advisors in the crypto space date back to the early days of Ethereum, early days of exchanges. And aside that, we have people that work with IBM. So we have Arlene Green, who's worked with IBM for years, aside from Steve, and Steve is also heavy in the finance space. Aside from that, we have guys back from JP Morgan and Bear Stearns, now starting crypto funds. Okay, so when it comes to our economics and how this works, right? So our total supply, once we're all done, is a lot of tokens. It's 4.2 billion. Now, upfront, it's not that much. That's going to take years to come out and happens as it mines. During our token presale, which is where we're at right now, we're selling 215 million tokens. Those are only for token presale investors. When we do a public sale, we've allocated another 215 million tokens in the future. Outside of that, we've allocated the same amount, basically 630 million, for the company itself, and these are tokens that we get to sell. Now, those are tokens that we vest over 6 years. We don't just get them, right? And we use them accordingly, whether it's to sell for SaaS, sell, founder tokens, advisors, whatever it may be. And the majority of our tokens go to the mining community itself. Now, when you talk about our token's value, how we value the token, why we created it, why it works. This is actually where we spent most of our time. How do you truly value any token? And we worked on that particularly. Now, when it comes to our world, miners need to process data, and they get paid for that. So we said, well, okay. They use a CPU, a GPU, memory, storage, data payloads, network, you name it. It executes for a certain amount of time, so they deserve some value for that, some money out of that. So that's number one. Number two, we incentivize those miners to continue to innovate. That's why you see I talk about here about Moore's Law and Worth's Law. So Moore's is, every 24 months, your transistors double. That means your processors might get faster or slower or whatever it is. In software, it actually is the inverse. It goes slower every 24 months. It gets slower and slower and slower because software becomes more and more complex. Now we've baked all these attributes into the token that help us derive the value of that token so that those miners get paid accordingly, right? Now obviously it also plays into account the basics, supply and demand. There's a finite amount of tokens, limited supply. We're pushing our customers to buy as many as possible, so all that drives up the value. Finance. So when it comes to our milestones for the next year, we're building out the network. We're focusing on signing up our beta customers and partners, and we plan to launch the network in 2019. When it comes to our token, I mentioned to you before, we work side by side with Ethereum. It's an ERC20 token, so it works the same way. Our transactions happen through that with a smart contract. Miners and our customers get paid accordingly, and it's done. The opportunity. So this is where it gets interesting. For our pre-sale token investors, we're offering it only to them is a 10% revenue share in perpetuity. So what that means is this. Each token you buy has a certain amount from that 10%. As long as you hold those tokens, we'll keep paying you more tokens over time, every quarter or every month, however it is we decide to do it. It'll happen all via the smart contract, and it's right off the top of our revenues. It goes to the same smart contract that our customers and miners go through. And this is just keep going. Now, you can choose to sell them if you want to, and that's fine. But whatever you sell, you no longer get revenues for those. You only get for what you have. This is not a transferable feature, so you can't give it to your friend or your brother or your sister. It's a function of doing the pre-sale itself. We offer a 0 to 30% discount based off of your vesting, and we have a hard cap of 15 million. Questions? Go ahead.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you want to take proof of work from the existing mining pools, and you want to make that work useful. Well, how do you do that from like a technical standpoint? Mm-hmm. How do you take those hashes and turn them into useful machine learning power?
Right. So if a miner today has what? They might have an Antminer or 12 GPUs on their computer, right? So those GPUs are just really going really fast to generate a hash code. And that hash code is like brute force. Can I put it in the blockchain? No. Can I put it in the blockchain? No. And that's all it's doing, right? Well, I can still use that GPU to do some kind of computer vision algorithm and spit out something else called a perception hash, right? That's one of the key things about our blockchain. So instead of using cryptographic hashes, we're using a perception hash. So as an example, if I took a picture of this remote control, right? Took a picture. I run an algorithm and say, give me the perception hash for this. It gives me some code for this that only represents this. If I take a picture like this, from the back, it'll give me a new perception hash. And then I can take those two and say, let me compare and see how close those are to each other. That's how we store things on our blockchain. And that's instead of the cryptographic hashes, you have to make those. So if you've already learned something, we already know you learned it. And we know by how far off you've learned it. You follow me there so far? I am, yeah. Right. So then what we're basically doing is we're not doing away with, you don't have to mine Ethereum anymore or something like that. You still need to do that, right? But that's done outside of our system. What you're actually doing on our system is a premium. You're doing AI processing. However much time it takes, we determine how many tokens you get. We benchmark a miner. So for an example, we give a miner an IQ from 0 to 10. If you have a 10, you're going to earn the best. If you have a 0, time to upgrade, right? And we keep watching that over time, and you compete amongst the network to always ensure you have the fastest.
So with this algorithm, you guys could potentially plug into multiple hashing algorithms at the same time.
Yeah. No, and there's also many things that we're doing. So when it comes to machine learning algorithms, there's hundreds of these algorithms out there. Some that are very specific for computer vision, others that are specific to just raw data, and all of those will be plugged into our miner.
So are you effectively doing a variation of sort of what storage does for file, what Golem does for rasterizing, what VideoCoin does for video streaming?
Yeah, in a sense, exactly right.
So basically, anybody with the proper hardware in the world can essentially dedicate their servers using your blockchain and your kind of plugin, I guess, to use those resources to do AI and machine learning mining.
Exactly right. With the difference that here, AI algorithms are also evolving and growing. So if a miner is a guy like me who's a computer scientist, I would download the software and make some crazy fast algorithms to work on my hardware. And I would be incentivized for that.
Well, yeah, just like obviously Bitcoin, it started out with regular computers, and now it's like supercomputers. So from the start, can an ordinary person with a laptop mine, or is it pretty much going to be data centers?
No, anybody can mine. And as this grows over time, not all machine learning requires these massive GPUs. So once we start amassing terabytes and terabytes of data, different types of machines start taking a role in the process, even down to like a smartphone or an Xbox, where they can take a role and say, okay, I can do some processing, not necessarily the fancy stuff a GPU does, right?
Right.
But the more simple things, and still be, let me pay you accordingly for your work.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Do you have the conversion software for like ant miners and that kind of stuff?
What do you mean?
Like how do I take my ant miner, so we've got one laying around,
Right.
and run your software?
Right, so right now, we're not on Antminer, obviously, right? And what we're actually doing, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking to the largest mining pools, right? So in the case of NiceHash, they have their own mining software, and they make their own things. And that's where our miner is a framework to them that they can interface with to use our protocol. In the case of Antminer, those chips are highly specialized for just that algorithm, and may not apply to, say, machine learning, but it'll probably apply to the other products that they're doing now with their AI chips. And that's something you'll start seeing come out in the near future. Now, knowing that the Antminer is just a little BeagleBone interfacing with it, you could just install it, log in with Linux and SSH and download the software and run it. It just wouldn't use all the little hash cards that you have inside of that.
Okay.
But is it effectively merge mining?
In what sense?
Are you mining, so let's say SHA-256, are you mining SHA-256 and also VOSAI at the same time?
We're not doing that part.
Okay.
Okay, so that still goes through Ethereum or whatever platform. We're just taking care of the machine learning part.
No, I guess this question was, is your algorithm such that one has to convert it to only mine yours, or can you do merge mining, which is pretty much SHA-256, where you would go and you would mine Bitcoin, and you could also do rootstock or Namecoin at the same
Yeah,
time.
the algorithms are completely different. They wouldn't apply.
Mine's old school.
With the rewards, it's not like
It's old school.
with the rewards, it's not like a Bitcoin block where only one person gets it. Everybody mining, you get paid as you mine. It's not
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that you're getting paid by block. We're looking at it more as by the data,
right.
right? So at the end of the day, I mean, we know what our customers will generate a month per job site, let's say for construction, right? A larger construction company might generate maybe a terabyte of data per job site per month, right? And then we need to pay accordingly to that. And there's transmission fees and whatnot. And it's not really by the block. And again, it's not currency. It's a different concept here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand how you're going to integrate with the 500 million miners on all the different mining pools.
Right, no, we're not going to every single mining pool. We're going to strategic mining pools.
Right.
So we're talking to NiceHash. We're talking to a couple of others. And with those, we want to work together with them to integrate our protocols into their miners and vice versa.
But do you want to use their existing hashing power?
It would be their hashing power and it'd be offered to their community as an alternative to what they're doing today.
Okay.
So like NiceHash, for example, has a marketplace. you can go and always see which is
So it
a,
would have to be more profitable than Bitcoin or Ethereum then?
it will definitely be more profitable than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because, I mean, specifically here is you're doing AI. You're not just doing a transaction between two people. So there is a premium price for that. Yeah? Any more?
This is Alex Larson with Blockchain Capital. I'm curious, why wouldn't it be? Oh, sure. Wouldn't it be more directly comparable if you charged just Ethereum and paid out in Ethereum? So then, if you're an Ethereum miner, you can just see what's the amount of ETH I earn mining Ethereum versus mining VOSAI. What's the benefit to having a native payment token?
Right. So we have an inherent value tied to our token. I don't know if I can go back here or not. It's like the last, this slide here. Yeah. There's an inherent value tied to it that Ethereum doesn't have that capability. It's not tied to that. Right. So we have to take into account computation, storage, RAM, network time, payload, and also take in the two accounts of Moore's and Wirth's law to determine the IQs of each miner. And that tells them what their value is. So just using Ethereum, it would be fluctuating all over the place, right? I mean, I would
Sure.
love to, but
Okay. Thanks.
yeah. Any more questions? Great, thank you very much. I have some cards here. You got any cards?